I'm Veronica Dudo. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, not backing down. The war with Iran is in its sixth day, and the U.S. says no deals with Iran will be made without unconditional surrender. Cabinet shakeup with a new nominee for the Secretary of Homeland Security. What could be in store for the department? Price spikes. The economy sees consumer spending and stocks fall while gas prices rise. What does this mean for Americans? Plus, faithful witness.
If you are a woman of faith, you're living in a way that's countering a prevalent culture.
Hear the testimony of a former Mother Superior to be honored with an award this year. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the feast day of St. Colette. Our top story tonight, Israel says it has begun a broad-scale wave of attacks targeting key regime infrastructure across the Islamic Republic of Iran. In turn, Iran says it too has launched a mass of missiles towards Israel. Israeli warplanes are also targeting areas of Lebanon. Large plumes of smoke can be seen as a bombed building collapsed. More than 95,000 people have fled Beirut's suburbs and southern parts of the country after sweeping evacuation warnings. The chief of the Israeli Defense Forces has said the objective in Lebanon is to disarm Iran-backed Hezbollah fighters. Meanwhile, the U.S. has struck another Iranian ship, this one a large drone carrier, which is a converted container ship. The U.S. says it is not holding back on the mission to sink the entire Iranian Navy. President Donald Trump declares there will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. He also updates Americans on efforts to get people out of the war-torn region. The U.S. and Israel have battered Iran with strikes targeting their military capabilities, leadership, and nuclear program. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Veronica, good evening to you. Before the war in Iran started, there were diplomatic discussions, negotiations, but of course a deal never happened. And tonight, at least for now, it appears any more talks, they won't happen either.
In central Israel, video shows missiles being intercepted. And in southern Iran, rescues underway in Shiraz following strikes there. And while demanding unconditional surrender from the enemy, President Donald Trump also posts, after that, and the selection of a great and acceptable leader, we and many of our wonderful and very brave allies and partners will work tirelessly to bring Iran back from the brink of destruction, making it economically bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. Iran will have a great future.
Of course, it's in the best interest of the United States of America for Iran to no longer be led by a radical terrorist a regime that chants death to America and is lying to the United States and the world about their secret ambitions to possess a nuclear bomb.
One analyst thinks Iran has probably already selected who they want to be in charge, that being the son of the supreme leader who was just killed.
And this is a message of defiance, but also of continuity. The message is, you kill one Khamenei, we give you another.
Today, the president meeting with defense industry executives to push them to expedite supplies of more American-made weapons.
And the purpose of it is to talk about the president's aggressive and fierce support for rapidly increasing the ability of U.S. manufacturers to produce American-made weapons, which we know are the best in the world.
The Secretary of War warns the enemy there's no shortage of American will here and no shortage of munitions.
Our stockpiles of defensive and offensive weapons allow us to sustain this campaign as long as we need to. Again, our munition status only increases as our advantage increases.
President Trump also posts an update on efforts to get Americans home, writing, "We are moving thousands of people out of various countries throughout the Middle East. It is being done quietly but seamlessly." Still, as the war accelerates, there are more fears tonight about human displacement.
Now, Caroline Levitt also told reporters today that more than 30 Iranian vessels have been sunk and that Iran's Navy has been deemed combat ineffective. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Among those caught in the crossfire are the caretakers of special sites in the Holy Land. Religious orders have been working to provide shelter and hope to stranded pilgrims and concerned residents. Abbot Nicodemus Schnabel is the head of the Benedictine Abbey of the Door Mission in Jerusalem. Thank you so much for joining us. What has life been like in the wake of the recent outbreak of violence in the Middle East?
Yeah, we are back to war, we can say. It's not totally a new phenomenon, not a totally surprise, It sounds a little bit cynical, but I don't want to sound in that way. But we're used to it in a way, because we had the 7th of October 2023, and then what was come after this event, and also we are in a region where we are used to have this conflict. My prayer, my hope is always that we will seek true peace, but in the moment we are far away from that.
Can you tell us where you were when the strikes first began?
We were as a whole community, because we are one community at two places, at this Tabqa Priory for our chapter meeting. So we were all together there, and we started on Friday, and then Saturday we were surprised by the alarm, and then we go to our shelter. Of course, we were prepared in the way that the shelter was ready. We have enough water, enough food. And then we invited also, of course, our volunteers, our staff, but we had also a pilgrim group from France. 50 people were in the church in Tabqa, and we, of course, invite them also to our shelter. And we were together as this group, very international, 60 people, so German-speaking monks, volunteers from United States, from Hong Kong, bus driver, Palestinian, French pilgrim group, our staff from Israel. So, we're really a very international group, and we were there 2 hours, and it was a good atmosphere, because we were praying, we were singing, and it was good. It was immediately the attitude, what it's with the people who have now no shelter, what's the people who cannot seek refuge, what's the people who are totally irritated what's going on, who are not informed what's happening. And so we're really praying for all the people, for really the whole region, for the people in Israel, in Palestine, in Iran, in the Gulf states, really. And this was a good atmosphere, because it was not about what's about us, it was immediately what's about the others. And I think this is a very Christian attitude, to pray for the others.
What is your biggest concern right now for your community?
War, for me, it's never statistics, it's never numbers, it's faces, it's biography, it's the people I know. So because if we speak about war, we speak very often about the famous people, the politicians, the name we all know, but we forget the people who are not so famous.
Well, we are praying for you and, of course, your congregation and others in the region. Abbot Nicodemus, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
As the U.S. and Israeli war with Iran expands, China is stepping into the crisis with a high-profile diplomatic move. The CPC says it will send a special envoy of the Chinese government to the region to work for the de-escalation of hostilities in the Middle East. A foreign ministry spokesperson made the announcement on Thursday. China says the escalation of the conflict serves no one's interest and calls on all parties involved to find a solution through diplomacy. Gordon Chang is the author of Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. It's great to have you back.
Thank you so much, Veronica.
China's foreign minister said Beijing will send a special envoy to the Middle East for mediation efforts as regional tensions escalate surrounding the conflict with Iran. What's the motivation behind this announcement?
China wants the war to end. It wants to save its Iranian proxy. It wants the oil to flow through the Strait of Hormuz, because that is shaking the Chinese economy. And it wants to make sure that President Trump fails in his diplomacy in the Middle East. The problem for Beijing is that this envoy doesn't really have anything to offer anybody. So I don't think it's going to be a success from Beijing's point of view.
Now, the United States just took out 2 China-friendly leaders in Venezuela and, of course, Iran in just 2 months. What impacts will this have on the Chinese Communist Party?
One thing I think around the world is it shows that when the United States wants something, that China can't stop us. And the important point there is that Xi Jinping has been making the case for a very long time that China is going to own the 21st century and the U.S. was in terminal decline. Well, with China not being able to protect Venezuela, not being able to protect Iran, won't be able to protect Cuba, is being kicked out of Panama by President Trump, that narrative is now hard to maintain.
Now, there have been some alarming reports coming out that Russia has been giving Iran the military locations for American assets. Is this something that China would ever potentially do, since, of course, they did have some good relations with Iran?
I think China has already been doing that, but we also know that China has published the locations of American assets, and this was before the U.S. struck Iran. So yes, the Chinese are perfectly capable of doing that, and I'm sure they're doing that now.
As of now, President Trump is scheduled to visit China March 31st. That's certainly going to be an interesting meeting. What will the leaders discuss, and what might be some tangible outcomes of his trip?
I'm sure they'll discuss everything that's been on the agenda, and that's a lot of issues. But the big point about this is, before President Trump extracted Maduro and his wife from Caracas, the Chinese, I think, felt that they had basically the upper hand. They felt they were pushing Trump around on trade and all sorts of things. Now, with this year, that's completely changed, where Trump has shown that he's more powerful than the Chinese are. And I'm not so sure the Chinese are going to like the idea of a triumphant President Trump touring the Chinese capital. So yes, I suppose Trump certainly wants to go, but I'm not sure that the Chinese want him there now.
Well, we'll continue to follow it, and we know that you will as well. Gordon Chang, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The U.S. and the interim Venezuelan government have agreed to reestablish diplomatic relations. The historic deal comes 2 months after the U.S. military removed Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro in a precise operation. Now the U.S. State Department says it is focused on helping the Venezuelan people move forward toward a democratically elected government. The agency added that Interior Secretary Doug Burgum met with acting Venezuelan President Delcy Rodriguez to discuss oil and mineral opportunities, as well as a possible multi-million-dollar gold deal. So could Cuba be next on the Trump administration's agenda, standing alongside Inter Miami's owner Jorge Mas and Lionel Messi? President Trump said while the U.S. is currently focused on finishing the conflict in Iran, Cuba's turn is coming very soon.
Who came from Cuba, right? Originally from Cuba? Huh? Your parents came? And you're going to go back, oh, yeah. It's going to be, and you won't need my approval. You just fly back in when I can just see that. It's going to be a great day, right? We're going to celebrate that separately. I just want to wait a couple of weeks. I wanted to wait a couple of weeks, but we'll be together again soon, I suspect, celebrating what's going on in Cuba. They want to make a deal so badly, you have no idea.
The comments come as Cuba faces a total energy collapse following a U.S. executive order that imposes tariffs on any country supplying oil to the island. Trump mentioned that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is waiting and ready to lead the Cuba transition once the timing is right. The DHS shutdown will soon enter its third week, and there are no signs of progress to reopen it. The firing of Kristi Noem is not changing the minds of Democrats to fund the agency. They say they want true ICE reforms. So what is this shutdown doing to national security, especially amid the conflict in the Middle East? Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales spoke with lawmakers on both sides. Eric, isn't this a major security issue for the homeland?
It sure is, Veronica. Good evening to you. Newly named DHS Secretary Senator Markwayne Mullin inherits a slew of problems, including a funding lapse. This is a major concern. Under the DHS umbrella, you have the U.S. Coast Guard in charge of protecting our waterways, TSA, which is in charge of protecting our skies, and FEMA, which provides disaster relief. And these employees right now are on the job, not getting paid. Senate Majority Leader John Thune tells me Democrats are putting the country at risk.
Democrats continue to block and resist funding the department is a really sad reflection on their willingness to do anything to stop and block the president's agenda. This is beyond that. This is beyond politics. This is dangerous for the country.
It is shameful. I don't know how else to to describe it. It speaks to a long record of Democrats' deliberate efforts to undermine America's safety in the essential operations of DHS.
Lawmakers warn an attack on U.S. soil is very likely.
And I've never been more worried about a terrorist attack against our nation right now than I am right now because of the threat level coming from Iran. And now is not the time to stop funding DHS.
Democrats say if Republicans really care about security threats, they would negotiate ICE reforms, no matter who's in charge.
Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. I don't think it's going to change much. Takes a little heat off because, you don't have somebody there who killed their dog, but other than that, it's not much of an improvement.
The FBI has furloughed nearly 60% of its workforce, severely hampering intelligence gathering. Vermont Senator Peter Welch says FBI Director Kash Patel is to blame for that.
The damage that's being done is not a funding issue. It's a leadership issue on the Trump administration. Kash Patel just wiped out some of the top cyber people within the FBI. That was reckless and wrong.
Officials say Americans should be on heightened alert here at home and abroad. Switching gears a bit, I want to also tell you about two major shakeups in the Republican Party. Senator Steve Daines of Montana is not seeking re-election, and Catholic Representative Tony Gonzalez is dropping his bid for re-election in Texas after reports of an affair with the staffer surfaced. The staffer later committed suicide. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
The Department of Justice has posted 3 previously missing Epstein files online. The files contain 3 FBI interviews related to sexual assault allegations against President Donald Trump. However, Trump has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing in connection with Epstein. It's unclear why the witness allegations were not released. Last week, the DOJ said it began a review to see if any documents were improperly tagged in the review process. The agency said if that happened, it would be corrected. We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly. Economic strain. The U.S. economy faces a challenging crossroads. We'll discuss. The U.S. economy faces a challenging crossroads as the conflict with Iran intensifies. Global energy markets are reacting and driving up fuel costs for Americans. The rising prices at the pump come as the labor market cools. Today's report shows a significant drop in payrolls, signaling a shift in the workforce. With the unemployment rate ticking up and geopolitical tensions, analysts are tracking whether this is a temporary slowdown or a larger economic turn. Patrick Horan is the COO of the Fiscal Lab on Capitol Hill. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So first, let's begin with what's your assessment of the jobs report released today?
It's not a pretty report. It's grim in a lot of ways. The report showed net job loss of about 92,000 jobs. The expectation was for the economy to grow 50,000 on that. So instead of a gain, there was a big loss. Now, that number is going to be revised 2 times, so that could change, and perhaps will be revised in the positive direction, which would be great. I don't want to. It's just one report, so it doesn't by itself. It does not necessarily mean people should panic, but by itself, this data was not good. There was 86,000 jobs lost in the private sector. There were losses almost in every sector: manufacturing, construction, education, health, hospitals, leisure. The only sector that really saw some gains is finance. So it seems like it's actually not constrained to one sector. So it was not a pretty report. And we've had some not superb reports over the past year. So it's not that things could theoretically turn around, but things are not looking that great right now.
Now moving to some big headlines. How will the conflict in Iran and disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz impact U.S. economic growth?
Well, again, and here we see it's another example of a negative shock affecting the U.S. economy. In this case, it's going to likely reduce output growth. It's already caused oil prices and gas prices to rise. I think the Fed is going to see that with prices rising, it shouldn't tighten monetary policy, even if that means inflation goes up in the short run, because that would be doing more harm than good. So this sector, this shock is also not great for the U.S. economy.
Now, to potentially try and offset that, President Trump says oil is beginning to flow from Venezuela, with the U.S. as an eventual final destination. While it will certainly be a benefit in the long run, is there a short-term impact for Americans to maybe find some relief?
Yes, you have to. So it's important to understand that the vast majority of the oil that goes out of the Persian Gulf, which is affected by the war in Iran, mostly goes to East Asia, not to the United States. That said, it still affects the price of oil and gas across the whole world. These markets are linked, and we also depend to some degree on the economies of other countries too. So we are going to see some short-term pain. It's going to be worse for East Asia and Europe than the United States. Hopefully, there will be some relief in the form of more oil from Venezuela, perhaps other places, perhaps Canada. But I think we're still looking at some pain on this front.
Now, national gas prices rose to $3.25 this week. Now, we typically see prices rise when the warmer weather arrives, but a lot remains to be seen with what happens in the Middle East. Could this be a temporary spike or a bigger threat to consumer spending?
Well, it depends what you mean by temporary and how long. Again, most of the oil that goes out of the Persian Gulf goes to East Asia, but it also makes up about 20% of all oil produced every day. So it's a choke point for the whole global economy. And I've seen some simulations that indicate that if the crisis isn't resolved relatively quickly, say a matter of a few weeks, then you're going to see oil and gas prices continue to rise, and consumers are going to continue to feel the pain there.
Well, we'll certainly continue to track it. We know you will too. Patrick Horan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, Against the Tide. After almost 30 years of leading a religious order, hear how this year's Given awardee is helping to form today's young women. Commemorating International Women's Day, the Given Institute announced that Mother Agnes Mary Donovan, founding member and former Superior General of the Sisters of Life, will receive the 2026 Given Fiat Award. She will be recognized for her extraordinary witness to the dignity of women, the gift of life, and the integration of faith and professional excellence. EWTN News foreign correspondent Colin Flynn had the opportunity to interview Mother Agnes.
Well, I was shocked, actually, and I'm deeply pleased. I love Given. It was raised up with a particular purpose, which was to identify young women who had an aptitude for leadership, who were Catholic, and for whom an institute like Given could provide formation, networking, help them to identify the gifts that God has given them that they can use at the service of the world and the church. And it's done a remarkable job of that, which is really so pleasing.
How do you recognize, Mother, a God-given gift? You know, we hear that phrase sometimes. It's a God-given gift or a God-given talent. How do you know when you have something that is actually a gift from God and that you should use it?
Well, one of the ways I think that you notice it most easily is that other people notice it first. And they'll tell you, you ought to be a teacher. Or they might have said to you, Colin,
there's no hope for you. No. You were struggling to find the talent there.
No, you should be, in this business of communications because you communicate so fastly, so easily, so readily,
Good recovery.
So anyway, I think those are some of the ways in which a person knows. And that's what happens at this Given Institute. Others observe and see and hear, listen to what they've said and written, listen to the desires that they have in their hearts, and altogether that begins to emerge what God has given this person.
Why do you think it's hard for young women, because that's who you primarily work with, for them to recognize that in themselves sometimes, that it needs to be someone else pointing it out to them?
Well, I think that's true perhaps in all times, but I think it's uniquely true now, because if you are a woman of faith, you're living in a way that's countering a prevalent culture. So you don't fit in, and you don't fit the mold of those who are or look like they will become successful. And so it's very important to have other people around you ratify and encourage and identify that you are uniquely gifted in this way. And this is a gift that has been given that you can develop and give back to the world.
It can be isolating sometimes, can't it? If you feel like you're the only one who has this faith and wants to live by these values, and especially incorporate it into your career or your work life.
Exactly. That is your faith can make you feel very isolated from whatever is mainstream. which is really a pity, and which is why a community of people which surrounds you, you know, that is provided by Given is just one of those avenues.
Within the last 6 months, Brian Birch has become the U.S. ambassador to the Holy See. Now he is talking to EWTN News in a new interview.
I was walking into a position that was bigger than me. There was a relationship between the Holy See and the Vatican that had gone back since 1984.
If you want to see Column's full interview with the U.S. ambassador to the Holy See, it will air on EWTN News in Depth tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Veronica Dudo. Good night and God bless.